Hello and welcome to Snapshot. I'm your host, Alan Wolfe, and on this edition, we're going to take you along with us as we investigate the world of kinetic art. Well, what is kinetic art? Obviously, it's a type of artwork, but just what does it mean? I know from being in school just a couple years ago that kinetic has something to do with energy, some kind of movement perhaps. Today, we're at the workshop of Kyle Dries in Coral Gables, who is a kinetic artist. Thank you so much for having us here today.
It's a pleasure, Alan.
So tell us, what is kinetic art? Is that kinetic art walking out the back door, your dog there? It moves.
It could be. Art I don't know about.
Okay.
Well,
What is this whole business of making artwork that is, it's not painting, it's not sculpting? What's it about?
well, it is sculpture. It's moving sculpture. I started out doing static artwork, but I found that I had more of an interest in moving sculpture because it just interested me personally. So I took it to a further degree than I anticipated.
Would there be a definition of kinetic art, a kind of a general definition? Is it art that moves by mechanical means? Do you use motors? What is it all about?
I've used motors and just hand-powered things. Kinetic art, there's also two-dimensional kinetic art that uses optics to fool your eye into thinking that there's movement. But this is a literal kind of kinetic sculpture.
Talking about that, I see on the wall here, Glenn, if you can get a shot of this, this as you move really does give an illusion of movement. Would this be a type of that kinetic art?
Right, that would be. This is just a poster, but that's, there's an artist named Bridget Riley who in the 70s did a lot of this, these patterns that overlap and they give you the illusion of movement.
So either real-time movement or illusory type movement is all part of kinetic art.
Right.
You have to be somewhat of a mechanic to do this? Good with your hands, making things that work?
I do.
Did you put together Legos when you were a kid?
Sure did.
Yeah. Do you still do it?
Don't ask me.
No more Legos, right?
No, unless they're steel, I don't play with them anymore.
How does all of this begin? I see you've got a few pieces of your artwork, and of course, later in the show, we're going to be going to an art gallery where much of it's on display.
Right.
Where does this start? Here?
Starts here first.
Starts in the heart.
Works its way up here.
Good response for an artist. Okay.
And, I then try to transfer it to here, to my sketch pad.
Okay, let's take a look in here. Just a very simple artist's book. What's the first one we have here?
Well, this is just my initial drawing for this piece that I was going to produce out of stainless steel. And, you know, I'll go through a number of different failed attempts, and I'll select the one that I want.
Then you mean artists don't just do it and it's magnificent from the beginning?
No, it's like everything else.
Sort of like this show, you know. Sometimes it's good, other times, who knows. This is a good one. Don't turn your TV off.
Okay.
Okay, we have also some more drawings here.
Right.
What's this?
This is
our second one here.
Probably the next piece I'm going to crank out here. And I'll try maybe do more than one at a time. So, save me time.
And what would be the media for this?
Stainless steel.
Is that tough to work with?
It can be difficult if you don't have the right tools. But it's pretty, I enjoy it because it's really permanent. Once you're finished with it, it's going to be around for centuries.
What is this going to be, for example?
It's just an abstract design that I can balance and give movement to.
Okay. As we move on in the book here, you notice I know exactly what page to go to.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Just a miracle what these will do, huh?
Here's a
Makes me
design.
look like I know what I'm doing. Okay, Glenn, I don't want to hear anything about that.
Here's a design for like a large freestanding piece. But then as I looked at it, I realized I could make a good jewelry design out of these. I'd like to make some miniature jewelry designs, and there's a number of them here.
What would be the size of this?
Well, how much you ask me? I shrunk it down to something about this size. I realized that almost all of my pieces would translate into miniatures.
Okay, now on this sheet we have 3 different drawings. The one to the top left is this the finished product?
Right, that would be like a hoop earring. They're all earrings, and this is another design for that, another design. I'm just...
and these all move?
They will move, yes, very freely. And
how do you get that to happen? Do you use ball bearings? Do you
bearings, motors, wind power, you name it. I'll get it to move.
Now, a guy such as a TV talk show host talked about wind power. Do you think that since I do so much talking, I might qualify for having like lots of wind power? You might perhaps hang a nose ring that moves or something.
I have to think
My
about
wife
that.
would like to hang one of those, but she can forget about that. Getting back to this for just a moment here, these are beautiful designs. You somewhat of a draftsman as well?
Yes, done a lot of drawing. Once I realized that I could translate these pieces into miniature form, I did this prototype for a miniature sculpture. This one's made out of brass, and I'm using it as the original, and I'll show you how it moves here. It's all independent movement.
Each piece actually moves independent one from the other.
Right.
Okay, it moves so freely and smoothly.
That's the idea. I want to give a feeling of
Look at that.
effortlessness and ease of movement. And this is something that
It's almost like the universe, isn't it?
you could say that.
I did say that. Thank you. He gave me permission to say. I said something right. I'm not an artist, but look, I try, right?
So I took this piece and I had this brainstorm that instead of producing each one by hand myself, I'm having them cast in bronze, and I want to do an edition of bronzes. So these are some examples. They come out very rough like this from the foundry rather.
And again, what metal are we looking
This
at?
is bronze. This is a brass prototype and gold-plated, but the bronze I find a lot more aesthetically pleasing. So they come out rough like this, and after they're polished, they have a nice, finish to them.
Now, is this polished?
Right.
There's no plating on this at all?
No. This started out as this piece, and you can see how much it's sort of
yes.
shrunk and gotten a little bit wobbly looking, but we can take care of a lot of little defects, and these still aren't finished yet.
You know, it's very relaxing to watch the movement of this, just to watch it flow.
Yeah, I'd
and it's
say
different
so.
every time.
Right, it never really moves the same way twice, and maybe similarly, but not quite. It has a couple of bugs that aren't completely worked out yet, but you get the idea.
Absolutely.
So
What do you have on the wall here?
this is that stainless piece that I showed you the drawing of. I will make a larger shop drawing from which I can cut my parts out, and I'll eventually weld up all these parts and put the bearings in and assemble them until I have this.
So this is being manufactured now. It's not finished.
This one's finished, and I'll show you how it moves. It's all on
Do
bearings.
you make these in various sizes, the same one in various sizes?
No, I generally use the same size. I like to get into making additions where I can just bang them out a little more quickly. And
Do you ever get anything that at first glance is finished and then you look at it again and you say, I really would like to add this or that to make it a finished piece?
Right, yes, that's exactly what happened to this piece. It's quite different and complex, more complicated than this original piece that I started out with. But once I had it down, I realized that I could change a few parts and come out with a more interesting piece, so that's what I did.
What's next on our tour here in your shop?
Well, I thought I'd show you some of the process that I use. I have my MIG welder here, which welds stainless steel and aluminum and...
This is
all
really
your
like your
exotic metals.
palette, isn't it?
Yes, you could say that. And you just did.
So, everybody wants to be a comedian here? Hey, listen, folks. We got to tell him. I'll do the jokes on this show. Now, go ahead. Excuse me. I was just talking to the audience for a minute.
So as you can see, I have my little jig here with a couple of the parts that I'm going to weld. This would represent a joint here, this part. It's just going to be welded and would be one of these parts here for another piece. And I use a jig just to hold it in place while I'm welding, because it gets pretty hot.
And you have to be pretty careful with welding. We wouldn't suggest anybody try this at home unless they're an expert at welding. It could hurt your eyes.
You sure could.
You can burn yourself.
Burn yourself. Do it all the time.
Burn
Even
down
if you're not an
your,
expert, you
your
gotta be careful.
shop, for that matter.
You sure could. So I'll show you just the basics of welding. Put your ground clamp on here. Put on your mask.
Okay, turn on the power.
Turn it on. wear gloves, which I don't have handy, but it's all right.
Now, there is a point when I should not be looking at this. Of course, our audience won't see the same frequencies of light, so it won't be a problem on television.
Right.
But I need to look away from this while you're doing and explaining.
Right.
Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So this is about like looking at the sun. So you don't normally want to look at the sun. Don't want to look at this either.
No.
So let me fire this up for you.
Okay. Watch this, folks. This is really going to be interesting. What is it that you're doing right now? What were you just welding together?
This is a joint for that piece, and sometimes this is a little finicky, like it is now.
And what are you pulling out of the tip at this point?
This is wire, a wire-fed welder. It extrudes a wire that is creating the arc and the heat for welding, and it's depositing metal into the joint.
At a very high temperature?
Very high temperature.
Do you have to have a special metal in the wire to actually stick to the metal you're working with? Is that a consideration?
You have to use the same alloy of steel or aluminum. If I'm welding stainless, I have to have a stainless wire. If I'm welding aluminum, I use an aluminum wire.
So you don't have interaction between the metals that way?
That's the only way they're going to stick anyway. So I'll flip it over to the bottom of this.
You know, most people would not think that you're an artist. I mean, here you are with a welder in your hand, and of course we see the beautiful work, and we're going to see more at the gallery later.
Right.
But this is not typical of what people expect from an artist. True?
Well, you know, I kind of, you know, happed into this kinetic stuff, and I just found out what I needed to do to get to where I wanted to go.
And you love it. Obviously, it's really a labor of love for you.
It's a labor, all right.
It really is.
I don't know if I always love it.
Okay.
And so I'll just...
Well, that's an honest evaluation.
You know, as I get more experience, I'll have some slightly better tools, but... So that's that for this tool.
So you have welded the joint now.
Right.
And what's next?
I'll,
Still hot.
It's a little hot. I'll use my old grinder here.
Okay, now what are you doing this for? Just to smooth it out?
Or smooth it out, right. This is a bit of a rough version of what I do. But you get the idea. This is a compressed version of the time it takes to do any of these things.
Of course, you're just doing this for the benefit of our audience to show them the method that's used to do this.
It's basically a miniature machine shop that you'd find in any industry that has to deal with, you know, high-strength materials.
Hey, people, let me just tell you one thing. All you guys out there on this old house show, eat your heart out. We got you on this one.
I have my...
Okay, we're in a drill press now.
This is my drill press, and the bearings are precise tolerance. And
do you purchase them knowing what that is ahead of time, or do you have to grind them?
no, I buy the bearings first, and I know what size they are, and I get the appropriate reamer. A reamer is different from a drill bit. Because
Yeah, my boss used to have the appropriate reamer every time I'd go into his office.
He has the right size for it?
Absolutely.
Well, this one's the right size for the hole I'm going to use for my bearings. So I'll get it lined up here. And this will give me the precise dimension I need to press the bearing in there so it doesn't rattle around, you don't need to glue it, it just presses in there and it stays put forever.
What are they made of? The bearings.
Stainless steel. So that's my reamed piece. It's not beautiful right now, but then I would go ahead and start polishing it and doing all the adjustments that I need. Sometimes I have to bend them and grind them and whatnot. So that's the process I use.
Again, it's a very compressed version of what you do. Normally, to make a piece like this, what are we talking about in terms of time?
For me, it was an incredible amount of time. The design, see, I'm a very part-time sculptor because I spend all my time working for other people.
And it's unfortunate that quite often, even though art and the humanities in general are what really bring out the human qualities in people, people are not willing to pay for that. And so people such as yourself really can't work full-time at making these magnificent pieces for all of us to enjoy. That's unfortunate.
Well, but you know, luckily I love it so much I do it anyway.
It is a labor, as you pointed out before.
So, well, this piece, it took me literally 2 years to finish this thing. I had to design it, get all the parts together, work out the bugs, fail a couple times, get it plated. Now I've got a gallery to help me.
Talking about the gallery, if I may,
Yes.
we're going to head up there.
I think I'll go with you.
And I think you... What about this guy? What do you think? We'll edit this part out. Only the host has the jokes. Only the host has the jokes. Okay. We're going to head out to the gallery now, where you're going to see some of Kyle's work. This is going to be great. So stay with us as we continue here on Snapshot. Well, as you can see, we've arrived here at the Adamar Fine Arts Gallery here in Northeast Miami. We're going to see more of Kyle's work. Kyle and I drove up here on our Harley Davidsons, of course, and what other way is there to travel? And as always, the Snapshot crew always has an entourage with us. And Ralph, if you don't mind, appreciate it if you take my motorcycle. Thank you very much. Ralph is my personal assistant here, as well as the manager of the Adamar Fine Arts Gallery here in Northeast Miami. And Kyle, I see you made it. Did you have a good ride?
Had a great ride.
Good. Let's go in and see your work.
Okay.
Well, we're inside the Adamar Fine Arts Gallery, and this is a beautiful place. And
Quite a showroom.
we're in the area of the gallery where Kyle Dree's work is displayed. Let me ask you a question. I told you I'd do the jokes. I haven't done one yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. This is really neat. Do you have a thing for fire engines and fire equipment? Is that the inspiration? What's the deal?
Well, not really. You know, I was just first attracted to the shapes of the axes. You know, I had done a lot of real minimal work using geometric forms, and really with no metaphor at all. So, but then I just realized I could balance anything. So these were sort of attractive shapes for me, and this started out as a wall sculpture.
They're pretty attractive for Lizzie Borden, too, I read back in history. But certainly that's not your attraction to it. You just, honestly, you like the contour of the blade with a relation to the handle? Or?
I like the combination of the stainless steel, the wood, the color black. The colors are working for me. This piece has a lot of movement to it. It's not only rotating on this plane, also it's on this plane, and I'll show you in a second, it twists over the top.
Wow.
And these materials allowed me a little room for commentary and a little bit of allegory is going on here. I've got the black spade as sort of a death card. I have this
We can see that at the base.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbolism, personal symbolism for me, which we won't go into right now.
Okay. Now this, of course, being kinetic art, this does move, and
Yep,
we can
sure does.
we can move this on its axis as well as spin these in opposite directions, I suppose.
Yeah.
Look at that. What do you think of this, guys? Whoa. This could end up like old-time England with the guillotine, couldn't it? That's beautiful. How do you get it to balance?
Well, I start out with the very end piece and get it balanced.
The very end piece being?
This one.
Okay, these are counterweights then.
Right. And once this is attached here, I take them both and balance them. And then I attach it to the third one, and I balance these three together. And then I attach it to the fourth one, and so on. And that's how you balance it.
Incredible. This is another very interesting piece of art here. And what do you call this?
It's called eccentric.
I would call it eccentric.
Because
it's right to the point, you might say.
Well, it's working at many different axes, so it's literally an eccentric rotation.
An accentric instead of
No, that's that
eccentric. Oh, that's that one. Okay.
Right, so.
Are these the counterweights?
Right.
So you start with these.
Right, I started...
As far as the balance goes.
I balance this piece, I attach them, I balance this piece, so on and so on. This one's a little funkier. I had to put weight inside of that, some of these boxes. This is painted steel. And
it moves as well. It's kinetic art.
Too, yeah.
Well, I'm going to
Give it a try,
this.
Alan.
Okay, this is going to go in this direction. I'm going to spin that in the other direction. This is incredible. Look at that. Look at that. And I don't want to get too close to it, but I suppose the bottom moves as well.
Yeah.
Indeed it does. And it's somewhat subdued by the rug here. Look at that. Well, that's great. Let's move on to the next one. You're not going to want to miss this. This is really neat. I'd like to have one of those in my house.
This could be arranged.
Kyle, as we move on here, this is a very interesting, it's a very shiny piece. Obviously made of some kind of metal. Is it painted or plated? What is this?
No, that's just polished aluminum. And this is the first aluminum piece I've done. And I found as I was working with it that I used a lot of woodworking tools.
And I see, of course, you have the bearings that you showed us back at the shop.
Right.
And those are all
precision bearings.
They're precision.
Right.
There's a difference?
That's what they're called, precision bearings.
So they're really to some very strict tolerances.
Yes, they are. They're built to withstand very heavy loads in power tools and heavy equipment. So
Is this easy to work with, this metal?
The aluminum's very easy to work with.
In terms of the tools you use?
Right, as I was using all woodworking tools, router, circular saw.
With the same
sander.
bits you would use for wood?
Yeah.
And so the aluminum must not be near as hard to cut and to dig into as stainless steel, for
right,
example?
No comparison.
And of course, it's easier to hang on the wall, too.
That's true.
Is there a uniform way to get this moving or just opposite directions?
Any way you like. That's
Look
the
at
beauty
that.
of it.
The counterbalance, right? Now, if somebody wanted to get involved in doing kinetic art, first of all, they'd have to have some pretty good ideas of what they wanted. We saw your sketch pad before,
right.
The way that you began. And is there a number that they could call, perhaps, to find out more about kinetic art?
Sure, you could call me personally.
Okay.
My number is 448-0795.
Okay, 448-0795. Take a look at it on your screen. I know you're going to want to copy that down if you're interested in kinetic art. So you really don't mind having some competition in the field. It's not easy to do. We saw that back at the shop.
I think information is a great way to create new and interesting images.
Artists helping
sharing.
other artists, and perhaps you learn something from each other.
Right.
Well, we're going to move on to something that you're going to really like. Don't go away. Let's go. Kyle, this is very different from what we just were looking at, but in a sense, very much the same, because it is kinetic. It does have movement. It's something you've obviously hammered away at, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about this work.
Well, this piece, obviously, it comes from a certain metaphor of the Soviet Union, their emblem. And, I realized after doing a few pieces that were just simply geometric that I could balance anything, literally anything. So I was trying to get a little bit of...
Now, when you speak about balance, if I may, you're not only talking about balance in terms of how it looks, but balance in terms of how it moves.
Right.
It has to do both, correct?
Correct. So I knew I had a really obvious metaphor on my hands that most people would be able to recognize pretty immediately. So I started out with this image, the hammer and sickle. And doing the type of work I do, I couldn't have just two parts. I wanted a number of parts to give it a more complex movement. So I added these other parts to it, these other shapes, and there's a sort of harmony and repetition. And I was looking for a base, because I needed a base, and then the most obvious one was this star. And it works in a couple of levels. I mean, I needed this real angular shape to contrast these curvilinear forms. And then I left it rusty because I felt at the time that the Soviet Union was in a state of decay, and then
and indeed, rust is indeed a state of decay, so to speak.
Definitely is. And then, like a week after I finished this, the coup happened in Russia, and that was the end of the Soviet Union.
Very symbolic, very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, if you'll excuse me a second, I got something I want to show you. I'll be right back.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Oh, something more here on Snapshot. Well, I have to tell you, I've seen what he's about to show you, and it's going to be unbelievable. This is something you'll never forget. Also, this is for you. I would really like to hear from you with your comments or questions regarding Snapshot. If you have any program ideas or just something you'd like to say to us about the show, we'd like to hear from you. Take a look at the number on your screen. It's 460-5521. Copy it down. We'd love to hear from you. Call us anytime between 9 and 4 o'clock, and we'd like to hear from you about anything to do with the show. Without further ado, You're not going to believe what Kyle has next for us here on Snapshot. Don't go away. Well, as promised, you know, things are really hopping here on Snapshot. Do you believe this? First of all, what do we have here? How did you make it? And who'd want to in the first place, Kyle? This is unbelievable.
Well, these are my spring boots.
Yeah, I guess this is going to be a springboard for your career.
Well, no, I was talking to another artist friend of mine, Manuel Acevedo.
Uh-huh.
And he said, you know, those are absurd, Kyle. And I was like, I know.
But they're artsy. There's no question about that.
But it's an absurd world, so...
It really is.
right
And you're
in.
certainly contributing to that, I must say. Why did you make something like this?
Because I wanted to.
That's a good reason, isn't it?
I enjoy it, and it's fun for... I want to combine it with other performance installations and whatnot.
And it took you quite a few minutes to get those boots on.
It did.
And you have steel springs, I assume.
Yeah, car springs and
Oh, really?
truck tire bottoms and
Perhaps old boots from the Harley Davidson that we rode in here today.
You got it.
You know, over here you have another kind of kinetic art. Let's hop over here and take a look at it.
Another.
Lilia Ramos, another member of the entourage here today on Snapshot, is going to demonstrate another kind of kinetic art here because it moves. And let's take a look at it. Look at that. Okay, well, we'll try again. And she dips it into a very special magic solution. It actually came from Jack and the Beanstalk's land, as a matter of fact. It's magic. Okay, and here we go again. Oh, I just can't resist all of this stuff. Wow. Do you suppose that I could do that?
Yes, of course.
Does it take some special training?
I can try.
Okay. All right. This is a hopping lot of fun here today. Is that enough?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to walk.
Wait. A little bit like that.
Okay. Okay.
Right, and then walk.
I'm going to walk down this way.
Yes. Now
Okay.
you open this.
Okay. As I walk, I open it.
Yes.
Hey, I'm a kinetic artist. Watch this. Here we go.
Open. Walk.
Oh, I got to open it more?
Yeah.
That's great. That's just wonderful. And this has been just wonderful, too. Kyle, I want to thank you so much for inviting us to take this behind the scenes
You're
look
very
at
welcome.
kinetic art. This guy
I
never
enjoyed
quits, does he?
myself.
Lily Ramos, thank you so much for joining us here as part of our entourage. And thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Snapshot. Until next time, I'm your host, Alan Wolfe, reminding you, keep your focus right here on Snapshot, and we'll see you then.